a good spot for this game, I think, and everything. Just a couple minutes before I came on here, I saw that Ross Dellinger from Sports Illustrated reported that Christian Fulton, who was a five-star cornerback signee with LSU a couple years ago, is being reinstated. And he had Fulton got a 2-year penalty for like failing a drug test and like tampering with it, they said. But the genesis of like the appeal process was no, he substituted a urine sample, which is a 1-year penalty, not tampering with a sample, which is a 2-year penalty where he cannot play. But yeah, it was kind of going back and forth with the NCAA, where he was his appeal was initially denied, so he was going to miss a second consecutive year. And I think this is after a redshirt year, so he hasn't played in like 2 or 3 years. But like I said, right before I sat down to record this, I saw, like I said, from Sports Illustrated's Ross Dellinger that Christian Fulton is going to be reinstated. So that gives LSU another talented player who is available for the game and things like that. I mean, not that LSU is really hurting for talent, because they do recruit very well and they have a very talented team. But adding Fulton will be a good addition for them. But with or without Fulton, I think that Miami's in a good spot. I've said it on here, and I've written it on stateoftheu.com, the website that, I've been managing for a couple of years now. Yeah, if Miami comes out and does what Miami needs to do, then, I'm fairly confident that Miami should be victorious.
Speaking of the powers that be in that situation, and then in others, and a similar situation in regards to off the field and legalities coming into it, and enforcement and authority and discipline and right and wrong and all of that. Just curious as to whether any of the message boards are lighting up there at Miami concerning Urban Meyer, because regardless of who you root for, it's one of the biggest stories we've seen in college football in a long, 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 long time, because of the subject matter and because of the success of the coach. Just anything there that Miami fans are either poking fun at, or a lot of programs across the country have stated that they're internalizing the situation or the story, and just to make sure that they have their process in order if they would have to be faced with that kind of situation.
Yeah, obviously, domestic violence and the allegations against Zach Smith are no laughing matter. So I'm not going to sit here and make any jokes about that, because there's nothing funny about that at all. In similar situations, Miami has removed players from the roster who had domestic violence or sexual assault allegations in the past. Jawand Blue and Eddie Johnson being linebackers who were kicked off the team for such allegations previously. And that's a thing that, for Miami, we've treated very seriously for a long time. And that is a thing about which, I'm not happy that it happens in Miami, but the response has been swift and has been decisive. Insofar as Urban Meyer, and especially with the report of the investigation that was released after the findings or whatever was announced. Well, first of all, the press conference was disgusting. To act as the victim for Urban Meyer in that situation is just absolutely disgusting. It was not about you or anything. It was about Courtney Smith and what was sent and said and all these different kind of things. Didn't even mention her name one time. Had to be asked directly about that, to put himself in the situation, say it's a shame that we are in this situation. You're not a victim of anything. So please stop that. The entire situation really insulted everyone's intelligence, anyone's intelligence. There's no rational person who believes these things. Urban Meyer and his wife are legendarily close. It has been written about, it's been talked about they've been married for almost 30 years. And to sit here and say and think that it stands to muster that your wife was sent something of the caliber that we've seen, because Brett McMurphy reported on, because he had the physical text messages to what was sent to Shelly Meyer, and then say, oh, I didn't know about my wife's text messages, of something of that nature, of someone, Zach Smith, who you are almost familial with because his grandfather was your mentor. So you have this close connection to the individual, and then on the side who the information was sent about, and then the very close proximity, obviously, to your wife. And to think, okay, well, yeah, it's fine. Well, I just didn't know about that. I can't call that lying, because that would be that would be libelous and slander. So I'm not calling it lying. It does not stand to reason in my estimation. And the report afterwards, like I was going to say, the 23-page report, which I sat and I went through last night. I'm sorry, my Google Home is acting crazy as I'm talking here. But no reasonable person can read that report and what was in there and come away thinking that Urban Meyer should have kept his job. And as I saw many people say, you know, Dan Wolken, Bomani Jones, many other journalists, myself included, in there, and just other people, the only reason that Urban Meyer has a job is because Ohio State did not want to fire him. So they did everything that they could to figure out or to come to terms with not firing him. I think it was Dan Wolken and a couple other journalists. They said, yeah, that's why the meetings took 12 hours yesterday, because it took reasonable people that long to come to the serious people to come to a very unserious decision by keeping Urban Meyer there. I think it is disgusting. I think it is atrocious. I think that it is one of the worst things that I've ever seen. And I am from Michigan. I went to Miami, and I mean, for football reasons and for sporting reasons, I've never seen it for Ohio State. I've never had any love for them. I've never had any collegial feeling for them. In a real life way, they disgust me now in a way that even more so than previous. And like I said, I'm not going to make any jokes about the situation because it is very serious and things like that. When you have Shelley Meyer saying to Courtney Smith and reportedly to Urban Meyer, look, this guy concerns me. I'm scared of him. I'm scared of Zach Smith and what he might do, not only to her, but to me because of his level of rage or whatever. And know that, but then say, oh, well, yeah, your wife didn't tell you that she might potentially be scared for her personal safety? Like I said, I cannot call that lying because I cannot do that. It does not stand to reason. I do not believe what it is that he said. And the entire enterprise of Ohio State University, the decision that they made, and the consequences that were meted out to the athletic director and to the coach, I just think are disgusting in full, like across the board, full stop, the end.
And if you just want to go to the letter of the contract, that speaks to what should have been decided in regards to the standards that the head football coach is placed under because of domestic violence and the obligation to report it and follow through on it.
Exactly. You know, and it just, yeah, you know, you're just, I mean, and, you know, the other revelation talking about today or late last night that Urban Meyer was asking people about how to delete text messages from his phone from more than a year ago so that when he went, you know, those would not be available. So you obviously have direct tampering that was discussed. I'm not going to say that he did that, but, you know, when he met with the investigators, there were no text messages for more than a year ago. So logically, if you're asking about how to do that because you want to get rid of those things, and when you go to meet with the investigator, those things do not exist, the logical link is there. I'm not saying exactly what happened because I was not there, and, you know, legally I cannot say that. However, following the chain of logic of the events from the times that, you know, they were reported, it seems to be very clear. And yeah, again, just like you talked about, the verbiage in the contract, you know, said a certain thing. The actions were different. Now, I don't know if, you know, the exact verbiage in the contract, and obviously, you know, the people who decided things at Ohio State maybe did not have the foundation for firing Urban Meyer for cause. And obviously you don't want to fire somebody and then pay them $38 million because $38 million is hard to come by, even at a very lucrative program with very, you know, probably rich boosters and things like that. However, you know, it just, again, does not fit reasonable estimation of any reasonable person that he keeps his job regardless of your rooting interest, period.
So the two situations you just outlined that you cannot 100% draw a conclusion, but any reasonable person would make the conclusion would be, yeah, concerning the text message communication from Shelley Meyer to Urban Meyer. Everybody, all of us thought the same thing when the story first broke, that obviously this is a married couple. And then, as you mentioned, it's even reported based on just storytelling throughout their life together and his coaching that they're close. So the magnitude, we're not talking about, can you stop by and grab a gallon of milk at the grocery store kind of text. We're talking about the most weighty text you can imagine receiving, number one. And then the other conclusion that you just
let me stop you right there again, and just with the correction, the text messages were from Courtney Smith to Shelly Meyer,
sure,
not from Shelly Meyer to Urban Meyer. So just wanted to.
I'm sorry,
yeah,
yes, exactly. And then the other point that you made that was a logical conclusion. I lost it.
For deleting them.
Yes, if you're asking about it, and then in fact they don't exist prior to August 1st of last year, that's a logical conclusion. Again, you can't say it's a smoking gun. It's not, you see the guy over the dead body and you see he's holding a smoking gun. That's exactly what that means. It means that there is hardly any way you can feasibly imagine this person lying on the floor dead for any other reason than the guy holding the smoking gun, but you didn't see the shot fired. The committee at the same time, or the investigative committee, they went to other conclusions and drew other conclusions that seem to be a little bit more of a stretch in regards to Urban Meyer's good faith, however they phrased it, his diligence in pursuing the matter, or in another way, they his remorse and his also because based on the decisions that he's made at Ohio State in reprimanding players, that he has that level of respect for women. So I'm not denying those things, but again, those are those two statements, those various statements have a larger disparity between connecting the dots than do the two that you made in regards to showing guilt.
Yep.
All right. Didn't necessarily want to go down that path, but you raise a lot of good things about that situation. And that's just a bit baffling for a number of reasons. And I'm not the first guy that goes to the table or goes to social media anytime that there is a crime committed or a law broken, and then because somebody's accused of it, I certainly want due process to follow through and so forth. So I'm not at the forefront of the court of public opinion to accuse and convict somebody before it's been legally tried and determined. So I always side on the innocent until proven guilty. But so that's where Zach Smith stands, because none of those acts, at least the recent ones, weren't necessarily proven after they were investigated. But the Urban Meyer situation and doing due diligence based on his job description and just moral obligation, he didn't meet those standards by any stretch.